fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor clean. We are proud to claim the title of United States Marines.
Today on Vet Talk, we have Sherrise Palomino. Did I pronounce that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Candidate for 78th District.
77.
I'm sorry?
The 77.
Oh, 77, my bad. I say 78 so often, I get it confused. Sherrise, thank you for being here today. Can you give us a brief background regarding your roots and what you're currently doing?
Well, currently I'm running for the State Assembly in the 77th District. It's a vacant seat, so it's open for grabs. My background is I'm originally I was born in Brooklyn to Jamaican immigrant parents. My grandfather's family is from Cuba, and on my father's side, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, her family is from India.
That's good. That's a nice background.
Thank you.
So you grew up in Brooklyn. Any particular part of Brooklyn?
Well, I didn't just work in Brooklyn, we moved a lot. So
Okay.
I lived in Brooklyn and lived in other places. I've spent about half my life in Queens, and I've been working in the Bronx for the past 5.5 years, and I've been living here for almost 2 years now.
So education-wise, in high school, were you into any political, clubs or anything like that?
In high school, I went to high school in Atlanta, so in Stone Mountain, Georgia, and so I was the captain of our mock trial team and the editor of our high school newspaper. I was very active in high school, and politics has always been like a burning passion of mine. And I took that with me to college. I went to St. John's. I got a bachelor's degree in government and politics and a master's degree in government and politics at St. John's as well.
Perfect. Now, currently you're working as a...
With youth in the Bronx.
Okay. So you're helping out the youth in the Bronx. Any particular reason why you chose the Bronx to, I guess, start everything, since you're originally from Brooklyn?
Well, I took a job here 5.5 years ago to do, the focus of the work was doing HIV prevention with high-risk youth in the Bronx. My job is tailored over into just addressing general sexual health. So we focus on the holistic approach to pregnancy prevention, preventing STDs, HIV, and developing the youth. And what I do is in my program, we have a core group of 15 kids that we develop as youth leaders. We train them, and they help educate their peers in the community, and we do a lot of community-involved work in terms of trying to prevent HIV and STIs and teen pregnancy and really get our young people in leadership roles in the community.
I love that, especially since the Bronx is well known for being one of the highest, zip code populated or per capita with STDs. I want to say we're like in the top 5. Last time I checked, I want to say we're number 1, but I haven't done my statistics on that in a while.
Yeah.
Even so much so that we have at Double Dog, we're happy to give away the condoms that we receive from organizations, and we'll be happy to look into more of your work so we can see how we can help with that issue.
Okay, that'd be great.
Now, so we got your brief background. What are you currently working on your platform for your 77th district?
Well, education is something that I definitely want to champion, especially working with young people in the Bronx. So I'll get back to you get more detail on education. Education is a huge issue. Housing is a big problem. And so that's something that I definitely want to champion at the state level. Vets issues, as we've talked about, that's something that's very important to me. Public safety and women's rights and women's health. Like, those are issues that I've championed throughout my life in terms of doing advocacy work. Because I've done more, I don't just work in youth development, I do a lot of political advocacy work, a lot of social activism. And so these are issues that are very important in our community, and these are issues that I champion. So that's what I'm going to take with me when I go to Albany.
Okay, I like that. The fire and the passion, it's there, and she has the background for it. Now, the two main subjects that light bulb pops in my head. One is the veteran issue, and one is the housing issue. I think recently, I put out there an article. Our last article showed an issue with the veteran population where, we're becoming very homeless, and the issue is it's a simple issue, and well, it's an unrealistic issue with a simple solution to it, and it's not only hitting people in the Bronx, or assuming veterans in the Bronx, but veterans from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. Did you ever to
I
do
did
that?
read it.
Now, did you enjoy part of it? What did you get a sense from it?
Well, I got a sense that you're deeply passionate about this issue, and I do agree. I mean, we don't do enough for our vets. When someone puts their life on the line for our democracy, our freedom, we should do more to honor them. And it's a shame that we have such a high, tremendous rate of homelessness among our vets. We've failed as a society to really look after them, especially the vets coming from the Vietnam era. We see a lot of mental health issues with them. I think we've done a better job working with the vets who've served more recently, the post 9/11 vets. I think we've done a better job, but we haven't done enough, and it's not good enough. And our vets deserve better than that.
Now, not to sound nonchalant or rude about this, but you're not just throwing a pitch out there. You actually have a background where military family, so that's why it's such a huge issue with you.
Right, for me, my brother's in the Army. He's enlisted in the Army infantry. And so being in a military family, I do have a profound passion for it, and I understand it. My brother's not a vet yet, but he's going to be a vet. And so I don't want him to be placed in a situation where he's struggling to be reintegrated in civilian life because enough hasn't been offered to him. He's served honorably in Afghanistan in combat, and he's watched some people be killed, and they've been ambushed multiple times. They've had some tremendous, horrible experiences, and these guys who serve in combat and the women who serve as well, they go through a lot, and we need to be there for them. We need to be there for them as individuals, as family members, as friends, and as a society. And so, for me, I want to champion this issue because not enough is done. We often neglect our vets. It's so easy to send them into war, and it's so hard to take care of them when they come back, especially the vets who've been damaged. And a lot of the damage isn't just physical wounds. Sometimes they're invisible wounds. And that's what, we also need to take into consideration.
So now, regarding your brother, is he in country or out of country?
He's been back from his last deployment for just over a year, so he's.
Okay. Well, we wish him a good tour and rest of his contract, and if he decides to come back to the New York area, he'll have some friends around here.
Yeah.
Now, so you already have the background, you have the current issues with your involvement in work for your platforms, and now you're well versed within that community because of your family, etc. Now you've gone a step further where you've put. I don't see the nicest way to put this, but you've put your money where your mouth is.
Right.
You've been hands-on helping us over here at the Lorillard house, where we're hoping to have it renovated to house roughly 20 student veterans. And you've come in and put in some hands on your dirt and everything. That experience was, I believe, last weekend. What did you grab from that working with us?
I think it's important to give back. And for me, it was exciting. I mean, it's still in very early stages of development, and there's still a lot that you guys are still working towards before it's final. But I can envision that it being something that is very meaningful to the veterans in the Bronx. For me, one of the reasons why that was really important is because when my brother was deployed last year, as a sister, I had a hard time with his deployment, and so I wanted to do things that gave back to vets or people serving in the military. And so one of the things that I did was I wanted to volunteer, spend some time volunteering with vets. And I also did Tough Mudder, and that was part of my coping, and I also reached out to one of his staff sergeant who was killed. I reached out to his family, and that was really important for me as well, to be able to use that as a coping experience for, my brother being away and being in such severe danger.
Now, the Tough Mudder, that was, if I believe, a 10-mile or a 10K mud run?
It's 10 to 13 miles. I think the New York, the tri-state area was about 13 miles.
Okay, and you plan to do that again?
Yes.
This year?
Yes.
Well, if you have the time, I'm sure we can help you facilitate some veterans to participate with you if you like.
Sure.
So we'll see what we can do to get the registration started for a Tough Mudder. So you guys be prepared for that, okay? I know some of the viewers here would love to do something like that, as moto as that. So now, your platforms for women's rights. Now, we recently had a CEO from Military Women's Empower Limited. She was explaining to me the difficulties for a lot of women, not only as a woman, but as a woman veteran, that she did not receive as much support that she would get because they see her and they say, oh, well, she's, I guess, just a woman. Well, when you look into her history and her background, she's a highly decorated military woman where she, unfortunately, didn't get recognized as the male counterparts in her, which was a huge surprise to me. What have you done within the veteran, or not just the veteran community, but the women community to progress? I mean, obviously, you're a perfect example, or at least in my opinion, you're a perfect example of what we should strive to be, like not just a woman, but in general. But what have you done in your platform for that?
Well, I've done a lot of advocacy, especially around women's health. The past 2 years, I've gone to Albany with other advocates, and we pushed for the passage of the Women's Equality Act, which passed the state assembly both years and failed in the Senate both years. And there are some senators who've been blocking the passage of the Women's Equality Act. But I've done a lot of work with Planned Parenthood around, reproductive health rights and health in general. And I think one of the challenges is there is still a lot of sexism with women. We think that, it's 2014, that we're all equal, and we're not. Even within New York State, there are so many ridiculous limitations on equality. Like, for example, one of the points of the Women's Equality Act is to expand sexual harassment to all employers, because every employer is not covered under the sexual harassment. So if you work where it's just two people in that establishment, and as a woman, if you're being sexually harassed by your boss, you don't have the same protection as someone who works in a company with more employees. So one of the points of the Women's Equality Act was to extend the sexual harassment. And that's one of the things that we've, it's been pretty controversial, especially for women in the military, is sexual harassment. And some people deem it a rape culture. I'm not a part of the military. My brother is, and so to what extent that is the reality for women, I only know because of what those women the women who are coming forward are saying. And we need to not just look out for women who are in the military, but vets as well. When we think of vets, we always think of men. When we think of people serving in the military, we think of men, and we need to kind of change that framework so that we can see a serviceman and woman. Soldiers are men and women, and women can serve in combat now, finally, in an official capacity. And so we need to understand that, our female vets, they face some of the same challenges that our males face, and they deserve the same equal rights and not to be dismissed just because at the time they may have played a lesser role in combat or something else. I mean, they have equal say now.
For myself, I've actually, I'm actually have to penalize myself for not realizing sometimes the difference or the advocacy not being so broad of the female population. For me, I always assume, when you think of a veteran, you can think of anybody. You can think of a woman, man, young, old, it doesn't matter. Normally when anybody walks in that door, we always consider them a veteran in that shape and form as a veteran. But recently I had to, I've been, I guess, pained regarding Women's Veterans Day, I think it was called. I don't remember the exact month it was, but I was surprised to figure out that there was a Women's Veteran Day. I was like, well...
I didn't even know that
there
was a Women's Veteran Day.
To me, it was amazing because I never thought of it as being so separated or segregated. Because, And while I was working, there was sometimes women in my shop. I had women superiors, so to me it was, oh, there's women here anyway. I've seen women go into combat zones more frequently than men. So to me, I was always nonchalant. Wait, well, I'm assuming everybody has the same rights, but that's not the case. And, I mean, that short example where you gave us, where if it's two employees and one is a female who's getting harassed, and she might not have the same equality and rights, trying to do the sexual harassment, such as a large organization. I wouldn't imagine how that would feel when women that are faced with that situation. Where do they go to get some? What would a woman in that situation look towards for assistance?
And that's the problem. That's why the Women's Equality Act is so critical to pass. But because there is the 10th point, which is about abortion, it's being blocked. And, in politics, we get so caught up on the wedge issue, that one thing, whether it's abortion or gay rights, that we overlook the entire impact of that piece of legislation. There's a point in there about making sure that women get equal pay for equal work, and that can't pass. That hasn't passed.
See, I'm amazed. Like, I honestly don't. To me, I don't see how women aren't getting the same amount of money. It's crazy. I honestly don't see how that's an issue, but it is an issue, and I'm sure the statistics and other stuff to back that up, which I plan to look into, because it's something that is a very important issue that we should focus on.
And I would love to learn more about some of the challenges that women vets face, because that's something that is often, even with all the controversy recently on the federal level about vets, we haven't heard anything about women. Well, the examples are always men.
Yes.
It's always examples of men. So I would love to see data or information about how women are affected.
Well, this Monday we're having a few veterans coming in, male, female, new generation Vietnam veterans. Open discussion, and it's something that normally doesn't get. I want to say when the cameras are rolling for the news, they take the segments that they need and then they wipe out the rest. Well, fortunately, because of Vet Talk, we're able to take that full amount and now push it out there. So any data and information that we get, we have to share with you.
And that's something that we should also champion, because I think I didn't know there was a Women's Veterans Day, and I think this is something that we need to highlight. Women serve our country just as admirably as men do.
Well, after this commercial, we'll get back into some more topics with Sherrise, who is running for candidate 77th District.
My name is Gonzalo Duran. I was in the United States Marine Corps for 8 years. In 2008, I was deployed to Iraq, and I lived next to the burn pits out there. Unfortunately, at that time, I wasn't aware that it was affecting my lungs. Well, with the burn pits, they weren't being properly regulated, and so they were burning anything and everything you can imagine. I lived in a shack maybe less than a mile away from the burn pit. So while they were burning, the dust, debris, etc., would come surround us, but it's not like you can pick up and move. With that issue, for me, it messed up my lungs, and unfortunately, I have a lot of skin issues as well. Fashion Has Hearts is very unique. Now, with fashion, it's bringing veterans with artistic and their backgrounds and putting them in a different atmosphere for many, and giving them the opportunity that they would not come in contact with. Originally, I wanted my colors to be military or my branch, but to keep it more to the professional and simple look, I chose more of a black or grayscale outline. The shape of the insoles look just like a lung, so the inside will be the design of the lung. Then keeping with the phrase and the design of professional yet subtle with the motto. The outside is very basic. There's boss that represents a skyline, and then the bottom and inside have the different representations.
everyone. Today we have Sherrise Palomino. She's running for 77th District. And where we left off, we were going over your history and your background, which is very impressive, and the work that you've been doing so far. The last topic that I want to jump into was regarding the 10-point system. Now, layman's terms, because I'm not a politician or a political analyst or anything like that. Basically, it's a law trying to be passed with many, I guess, legislative attached to it, and because the Women's Act is attached to the Abortion Act, is being held. Is that the way?
No, the Women's Equality Act has 10 points in it.
Okay.
And so there's different points in it. There's like one that prevents discrimination against women who are in a domestic violence situation. There's the one that extends sexual harassment protections for women regardless of the company that they work at. Because right now in New York State, I think it's if you have 3 or less employees, you're not bound by that sexual harassment law. So that's one of, so it eliminates that so that it protects all women who are employed at anywhere. And then one of the points is expanding on abortion rights, where a woman can terminate her pregnancy beyond 6 months if it jeopardizes her health. And because abortion is such a controversial issue, even in a liberal state as New York, the law itself won't pass because there's 10 points in it, and because that's such a controversial issue, you know, there have been senators who block the passage of it because they don't agree with the abortion component.
Now that portion with the abortion, that could be removed?
That's one of the things that's in consideration is, do we pass the Women's Equality Act, we break it up into different pieces of legislation to pass the other critical important parts of it, and because the abortion component is holding it back.
Well,
So that's something that's in consideration.
Well, that's something that I'm sure you're going to be lobbying when you're in your position. Now, besides that issue, are there any other issues that you believe that families and military families or just families could use assistance that can counter with your platform?
Well, I think for me, one thing that I would like to see when it comes to vets and to military families is making sure that we have enough programs and support for military families. It's really hard when you're in a military family to have someone who's gone away. And especially when they're deployed in combat in a war zone. Even if they're not serving in a combat capacity, the deployment is still very stressful because bases have been attacked. You know, vehicles that are in transit have been attacked, even if they're not serving in infantry. So it's very stressful, and it's hard. The first part of the stress of being in a military family is the distance and being away from your loved one and not being able to communicate with them, because you can't just pick up the phone and call, you know, your husband or your father or your brother or your dad. You have to wait for them to call you. So you're kind of sitting here waiting in anticipation of that phone call, and it becomes it's stressful, you know, to not be able to be in contact with them. And then it's really stressful when you start having all these thoughts about what could possibly go wrong, and you know how dangerous it is. And it's more dangerous than I think our imaginations recognize. And so sometimes, you know, it's very overwhelming, you know, that fear of what would happen, because the last thing you want is to see a soldier or Marine or an airman showing up at your front door. And so there's always that fear of that happening.
Well, I think one of the biggest issues that we're facing right now is that a lot of our current acts are outdated.
Right.
So something as small as the Social Service Relief Act, I mean the point systems or the regulations for that, something like the home system.
Mm-hmm.
One of the requirements for you to get assistance under the act is to have a rent or a mortgage less than $1,250. I don't know if anybody's ever been to New York, but it's not that easy.
It's a studio apartment.
Yeah,
those places.
That's like rat-infested studio apartment in the basement. So examples like that, those are issues that are outdated and could easily help dozens, if not hundreds of families while their significant other is deployed.
Yeah.
And I would hope that as we build a relationship, not only with you but other elected officials, is to bring that up, and hopefully champion for us regarding that issue.
There's a lot of deficiencies with vet services and services even for military personnel, active duty military personnel, and I hope that I'm in a position in Albany where we can champion some of these issues and we can fill in the gaps in the state where there are gaps in the federal government when it comes to serving our military personnel, vets, and their families.
Now, recently, regarding my article, I'm not very politically correct when it comes to certain issues, and I try to stay in my lane as much as I can, but I've been very proactive in outing some of the political figures, and just to go on the record, it's already there. But I consider the politicians from New York State pretty much as a comparison with drug dealers around here, as corrupted as them. Now, obviously, I have you here, but you're someone that has been breaking that stigmatism for me, showing me that there is other people besides the one in power, not right now. And I'm not. If somebody wants to throw the brickstone at me for saying something like that, I mean, we have more than enough to show that we have politicians showing their genitals, and I think the 78 district had, or 79 district had a bribery scandal, I believe it was, and then if I remember correctly, you said yours is empty at the moment.
Right.
Oh, we have an empty seat, and where does that come from? I'm sure there's a whole section there of people that need to be represented, yet nobody's doing that. Would you give us some story or give us some information regarding the 77th district specifically?
Well, the reason the 77th district is vacant is because the state assemblywoman, Vanessa Gibson, ran for city council last year and she won. So she
Which
had
is awesome.
Yeah.
That's a positive thing.
So she had to vacate the seat. The governor refused to call a special election. He said it wasn't fiscally responsible to hold a special election when this is an election year. And so that's why there's vacancy. There's actually several vacancies in the assembly. There's two vacancies in the Bronx. There's the 77th and the 79th. And the 79th is because the state assemblyman was convicted of corruption.
Now, if we remove those two and the other ones that are still vacant, would they have similar stories where officials either rose up or got in trouble? Or
Yes.
Is there anything that's like weird that aren't any of those cases?
Well, some of the other assembly seats in the state, they ran for another seat and they vacated it. And because the governor didn't call a special election, those seats were vacant. There was a recent vacancy in Washington Heights because that assembly person pled guilty to.
Oh, yes, if I remember correctly, she it was a past issue.
Yeah, it was prior to her being elected, but it was still.
It's still an issue. Now, the people that you're going to represent, well, actually, you're a representative from there. You're someone from there. Can you give us more? Like, I know the 78 district, or is it? I want to say the 78 district covers the Cambridge area, which is has the Bronx Veteran Hospital. What's in the 77th district for the viewers that don't know? And me.
We have the Bronx Museum. We have the Borough Clemente State Park. We have a couple of other parks, and we have Volunteers in America.
Ah, yes, them.
Yes.
I mean that in a good way, and a negative way. But so what's the area? And can you give some statistics on ground?
So
streets?
roughly, it's about 161st Street north to about West Tremont. Obviously, it's not that. The district boundaries, Jagger, is Webster. It includes Claremont Park, and and then it goes over and encompasses Roberto Clemente Park, and it goes down into High Bridge.
Okay, and if for the viewers that don't know, those are huge, recreation and park, areas. So I didn't know that was all covered in that section. Oh, those are huge. Is that part of the reservoir?
No.
No? Okay. Because they were saying that came out recently with that. That's been pinging in my mind, but that's a different.
And we have a lot of vets. I mean, as I've been campaigning and, pounding the pavement and out there, I've been meeting a lot of vets, and it's great to meet vets, and then, we need to do better for them.
Well, the way I look at it is, with the word veteran, I mean, we're coming back to our community, so we're just reintegrating back where we left. So there's really the word veteran to me is just an additional word. There could be somebody who's running as a politician soon. To me, once again, he's just a citizen going back home to run for office. That's the way I look at it. Now, I want to stay positive, but is there anything within the, the current administration that you would want to change, or what's the reason why you're fighting so hard to take the 77 seat, not only to work on the platforms that you are, but there has to be something that you want to accomplish, at least maybe in your first term, or that you're looking forward to hit on now, even if you don't make the seat. I'm assuming you're going to be hitting on something.
Well, as we mentioned earlier in interviews, education is really important to me. I work with youth, and so I see how challenging the education system is for our young people. We have a lot of low-performing schools. We have a school, PS 73, in High Bridge, where less than 10% of the students are on grade level for English and for math. And that's not okay. That's an elementary school. So if they're starting behind in elementary, how are they going to get caught up by the time they're ready to graduate from high school? And so I want to champion better education policies. We have an education standard called Common Core, which has increased the standard, right? So prior to Common Core, the education standard was here. A lot of the kids in our community were performing here, and now Common Core has raised the standard here. And Common Core didn't come with any ways to bridge that achievement gap. So because they started Common Core in the middle of everyone's academic career, they just had a higher standard out. There was no transition to how do we get them to get to that stage. It's like, this is our new standard, roll it out. I think when you look at Common Core, and this goes with a lot of policies, public policies, they look great on paper. They're always great ideas until you have to roll it out. And so had they started Common Core at, say, kindergarten and followed them up, I think it would have been more effective. But when you're going to someone who's in 9th grade and then next year, 10th grade, they're in Common Core, you've now raised the standard and they weren't performing well in 9th grade, you're failing these kids. And so we need to really figure out how to bridge the achievement gap. And we do that by funding more after-school programs, providing better quality after-school programs, by integrating better technologies into the program, into schools, by giving teachers some more flexibility, by limiting all these standardized tests, because we're teaching our kids to take tests. We're not teaching them to think critically. We're not teaching them to figure out how to do things. It's memorize this to get to that. And that's not something that's going to get them very far. They need to be able to think critically, to be self-reliant, self-independent, and be able to, excel. And it's hard to do that when they're coming from schools that aren't doing very well. And we have a lot of schools that are not doing a very good job.
Okay. And wow, that's one, depressing, and two, unfortunately, a current issue. Now,
even though it's depressing, there's something we can do about it. We can push for better education policies. We can push for more funding for low-performing schools so that they have additional programs to improve their academic standing, that they can work better with parents, that we can increase parental involvement. you know, we can work holistically as a community, getting parents involved and working better with schools to make sure that when the kids are going home, their parents can help them with their homework. Because that's one of the things that I've seen working with young people. We have kids whose parents, some of their parents can't help them with their homework, maybe because they don't speak English. We have a huge immigrant population in the Bronx from many different places, from Africa to Asia and Latin America. And so sometimes the parents don't speak English and they can't help their kids with their homework, or maybe the parents haven't gotten that far in school to help them with their homework. So making sure that there are resources that parents have and that parents are aware of the resources, so that they can help, you know, and be directly involved in their kids' education.
Well, this facility, that we have here, it's fully funded and ran by us over here, one by me. So what I'm going to throw out there for you is there any if there are any programs that you come across that you think veterans mentoring, tutoring would help in any way, please feel free to make the connection, and we'll be happy to do the rest.
That'd be great.
Now, for the viewers, if you would please go over your platform again, give us some information for your district, and then also if you have any fundraisers or any events that you'd like to announce, please do so.
Well, my again, the issues that I'm championing are education, housing, public safety, women's rights, and veterans affairs. My website is palomino2014.com, and if anyone wants to contribute and donate to my campaign, you can feel free to do so on my website, and that's palomino2014.com.
Well, thank you for coming, and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
To the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battle.